Ada tetangga yang ngomong ngapain cewek sekolah tinggi-tinggi jugaan nanti di dapur gitu. Tapi ambisiku lebih kuat daripada omongan mereka. Saya Lino Verlin, lulusan Bangkit. Sekarang saya bekerja sebagai website developer di Bali untuk bantu keluarga di desa. Saya dari Sempu, Kabupaten Banyuwangi, Jawa Timur. Kebanyakan orangnya tuh bekerja sebagai petani. Ibu saya seorang petani cabai. Pas saya dapat beasiswa teknik elektro di Bali, ya senang banget dong. Bapak ibu bangga banget. Lalu tiba-tiba pandemi datang. Penjualan cabai ibu saya menurun drastis. Ditambah bapak sakit. Putus asa sih. Tapi rasanya nggak mau nyanyain usaha yang udah dilakuin sama keluarga saya. Dari situ saya mulai coba nyari-nyari kerjaan. Setelah tanya-tanya, ternyata saya harus punya skill yang nyata. Suatu hari, dosen saya menginfokan ada pelatihan gratis, namanya Bangkit. Saya lihat websitenya, ternyata Bangkit itu partnernya dari perusahaan-perusahaan besar, jadi saya memutuskan untuk daftar. Waktu belajar cloud computing seperti IT automation, architecting, Python optimization, memang diajarin sama ahlinya langsung. Dari Bangkit itu kita juga diajari untuk bikin resume yang bagus, terus wawancara yang bagus. Terus karena di Bangkit itu ada job fair, di akhir acaranya saya ikutan aja ngelamar. Besoknya pas wawancara, pertanyaan yang dari Bangkit itu ada yang keluar, jadi saya lebih gampang untuk menjawabnya. Akhirnya saya diterima jadi full-time website developer. Pas gajian pertama, bapak saya senangnya bukan main. Beliau bilang, biasanya orang tua yang ngasih ke anak, sekarang anak yang ngasih ke orang tua. Lino Verlin yang dulu, anak dari desa, kurang percaya diri. Lino Verlin yang sekarang lebih percaya diri karena punya banyak skill.
Alright, so hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Adrianus Yoza, your learning support manager. So here with me is Mas Puja Pramudya, senior engineering manager from Bukalapak. Hi Mas Puja.
Halo Mas, hai Mas Yoza.
Okay, so today we will have a session about how to be a professional software engineer like Mas Puja. So without further ado, I will let Mas Puja to start his presentation. So for those of you who want to ask, please comment on the chat box and our team will collect the questions. Go ahead, Mas Puja.
Okay, thank you Mas Yoza. Hello everyone. It's very honored to me that Google Bangkit and Decoding give a chance to us to share what we can share with the next generation of software developers. My name is Puja Pramudya. Currently, I work on Bukalapak as a senior engineering manager. I started being a software engineer since 2011. Like 10 years ago, I was one of you, sitting in a class, attending a conference, asking myself that could I be one of them that talking to the audience to share what we can learn, to share what we have, to make sure that they don't repeat our mistakes. And today, yeah, it happens to me. I would like to share that it's not always easy to arrive at this stage. Yeah, I have been in this industry for 10 years. It's not too long compared to other engineers maybe, but for me it's quite a roller coaster ride. Yeah. Um, I started in 2011 building my own company, software company based in Bandung. Um, start coding with only 2 people, and then we are growing into 30 or 40 engineers until 2018. I chose to move to the other side there because at the time everyone said that working on a tech unicorn is different than you working with yourself. So I intrigued to try, and I moved to uh, a decacorn company in Indonesia. And after just 1 year there, I moved to Bukalapak, and hopefully my 10 years of journey can give you one or two things that you can learn, and uh, make sure that you don't repeat my mistakes. Um, Today I manage a squad. Yeah, what we call a squad in Buka is a team consists of 5 or 6 engineers. When I joined, I manage 2 teams and manage one project. Yeah, so in parallel, I think I coordinate with like more than 30 engineers at the same time. Because at the time, Buka on going to migrating their microservices from on-prem to cloud, yeah, to GCP, I think. And I helped managing the team, the migration of the mobile web. I think there are 6 or 7 pages that contribute to 60% of web traffic. Uh, but actually, I haven't developed for web that many because I started my career as a mobile apps developers. I built for a Windows Phone and then using Xamarin, working on Android and iOS also, and then working on backend, and then move up to the managerial levels. Um, but thankfully, this is not my first time speaking for Google. In 2015, Google invited us to be able to mentor several startup in Google Startup Bootcamp. And but today we're going to talk about something else. After 8 years building and designing more than like 200 mobile applications, I chose to move to management positions, what we call it engineering managers. Yeah, if you know, in our industry, being a software engineer, after you reach a certain level, um, commonly called seniors, yeah, a junior, mid-year seniors, then you can choose that you want to move to the individual track, what we call it IC track, yeah, individual contributors. Then you can become staff engineers, principal engineers, and if you work for a big company that big enough, you can be what we call distinguished engineer. In company like Google, distinguished engineer, uh, from the compensation benefit point of view, could be as high as the C level or VP level. Yeah, uh, although they are only coding or just architecting. That's how important it is being a distinguished software engineer. But to reach that level, of course, it took, I don't know, 20 or 30 years. Yeah, because not many people can reach that kind of levels. Um, I chose to the management positions in the previous company. In my own company, I work parallel as a CTO, but as CTO that manage only 30 people, it's different than working as engineering managers in a company as like Buka that has different scale. We have more than 600 engineers. uh, One of the priority of my job is recruitment. Yeah, maybe I've interviewed more than 50 engineers for my teams. And when I talk to the fresh grads, yeah, I hope that after this you continue your study and can graduate from your university. They always say that I always ask why you want to work for Puja, right? And one of top three answer is they want to learn building a large scale software by means that uh, building an application that hit by maybe hundreds million of users that consists of hundreds of microservices, etc. Yeah, they want to learn about clean code architecture. They want to learn how to write a software, make it layer by layer, and that's the only way they think they can succeed in this industry. Yeah. It is important knowing that how to work and building a clean code software, building well well made, yeah, code architecture. But there's one thing that you can't forget, that the code is wrote by people. Yeah, there's always the man or woman behind the code, which are the software engineers, you guys. And there's a very few books that discuss about the software engineers, how to be a software engineer, how to be a good software engineer. And after 10 years in this industry, the question remains that being a fresh grade, how to be a software engineer that really accepted by the company, that the company needs, that the company and the peer respect. And the answer is you just have to be being a professionals. Okay, you just have to be a professionals. But the question is how to be a professional software engineers, right? And the thing that I can write a code, I can write a code, I can build an app. So I publish it to the Play Store maybe. Then we claim ourselves. Yeah, I'm a software engineer. Okay, I'm an engineer. Uh, do you think that the code quality that you wrote matters to you? Because it is. Yeah, maybe currently you're just working on small applications, but in several cases, being a software engineer, you have a lot of responsibility. Um, there's a story about a space shuttle Challengers that launched on 1986. Yeah. After 70 seconds in the air, the rocket is blown away. Yeah. Seven astronauts. One of it is a teacher from high schools. Uh, Lost their life. And if you know, the rockets broke up because there's a gas that leak from a pipe, that what we call it, let's call it RRB. Yeah? Um, the pipe between a rocket, and what separate the pipe, it's a rubber, what that called O ring, yeah, a rubber that called O rings, to make sure there is no gas leaking between the pipe. And um, before the launch, the temperature around the launch pad, yeah, it's uh, 33 lower than the threshold that the component can hold. Okay, so maybe they know, maybe they don't, or we don't know the actual story, but the engineers from the company that who actually designed the O-ring actually reported to their managers 7 years earlier that the O-rings 7 years earlier they found that there's a defect before launching a rocket. Yeah. They suspected that the component will be very stiff, means that very cocky, that cannot seal uh, the airway between the pipe. And they suspect that if the temperature is too low when the rocket launch, the O-ring will be fail, and that could result it in the gas leaking to the other component of the rockets, and that actually happens. Yeah. They wrote memos that raising very giant red flags that this component should be fixed first before we actually launch the rocket. They strongly urged their company and NASA managers not to launch. And in an 11 hours meeting held just hours before the launch, those engineers present their data, their rage, they're asking for rationality. They protested. But in the end, the managers who have a decision making authority ignored them. And when the time for launch came, the engineers actually, maybe because they knew there could be something wrong about it, they refused to watch the broadcast because they fear an explosion on the pad. Uh, for the first 70 seconds, the challengers climbed gracefully into the sky and they began to relax. But after that, boom, the rocket is blown away. Despite of all the protests, the memos, the urging of the engineers, uh, the managers think they knew better, and they thought that the engineers, the one who actually wrote the component, wrote the software, just overreacting, and they didn't trust the engineers' data or the engineers' conclusions. They launched because they were under immense financial and political pressures, and they hope everything would be just fine. Yeah, they hope everything would be just fine, and uh, the launch would be successful. Uh, and if that's not the case, 7 lives is spent on, and uh, you know, the managers made a decision they had no right to make if they knew there's a data that cannot support them, right? But what about the engineers, you say? The engineers who actually wrote the code, um, yeah, okay, certainly the engineers did mentioning that to the managers. Uh, they went through the appropriate channels to report the defect. It seems that, yeah, the engineers can walk away, they cannot be blamed because they already report to their managers. But do you think that the engineers that knew the actual data could be do something better other than just reporting to the managers? If you are watching uh, live stream films from Netflix called Don't Look Up, those two engineers, Leonardo and Jennifer Lawrence, after kind of convince the president, they went to the media and tried to remind the citizens that there's big meteors come out and they should be prepared. That's what we call a responsibility as an engineer. That's what we call professionalism. They take responsibility. They took responsibility as engineers because they knew there's something wrong, right? Uh, the first when I came to Buka, and when I accepted a new software engineers, there is no, at first, there is no what we call it like 90 days plan for new engineers. So uh, many fresh graduates feels anxious about what they have to do in their first 90 days because in Indonesia we have what we call a probation period. Their superior have their own things. The senior engineers sometimes are very busy working on here, answering the questions in Slacking or video call. Several of them think it's not very important to have what we call this 90 days plan, and it's not well documented at first. But currently, it's getting better. We just started make a checklist and make it mandatory to the other squad to have what we call it onboarding checklist. Because as a new engineers, you are expected to directly work on your environment, right? And you are expected to be the professionals. And then become a question: what does the professional software engineers do, right? Because not many company as major as Puka that they already been in industry for 10 years, they knew that building a company consists of like more than hundreds of software engineers require the systems. Yeah, so this page intentionally left blank because it's the first experience that I when I came to Buka and meeting with new engineers and they don't know what we have to do in the first 90 days. So what we expect for the new grads is they're being a professionals. So we are going to talk today about professionalisms. Yeah, what is professionalisms? What is the criteria of the professional software engineers? And then we are talking about the tips, what we call it, what we can do, train ourselves to be a professionals. There are three a group of activity. The first one, you have to work with ethics. The second one, you have to work well with others, and the third one, you have to learn. And learn is your job. Okay, so how to be a professionals? It's a lot easier to be a non-professional software engineers. Non-professionals don't have to take responsibility for the job they do. Yeah. They leave the responsibility to their employers. If a non-professional make errors, the employer will clean up the mess. Okay, but when a professional make a mistake, he clean up the mess. So how to be professionals? Taking responsibility. Yeah, how to take responsibility, how we ensure that we as a new grads, as a software engineers, take the responsibility. And the first one, what we call it, we have to ensure that every code that we wrote will be functioning well. Yeah. Um, hey, of course, right? You have to make your code is uh, run well. But hey, when you are developing software as in a teams and with several other teams that working together building a, a big function, answering a software to be able to work well, it's not that easy, right? But as a software engineers, as the individuals, at least you can try to work and to wrote very well. How to know your QA, your your QA pair should find nothing, should find should find nothing about your defects or your bugs. Okay, you must know it works. You must know your code will works, and then you will ask, how can I know the work will works? Right? You test it. You test it again, you test it every day, you test it up, you test it down before you close your laptop, you test it again before you go into weekend, you test your code. So you just have to make sure that your code will be function very well. After you test it, then you make sure that the entire QA procedure will be automated so you don't have to test it manually from time to time. So this is the first basic criteria as a professional software engineers. You have to make sure that your code works, right? And second one, you have to ensure that the structure is built well and as flexible as you can. Okay. And that's why you have to learn about design pattern. That's why you have to know about um, clean code architecture, yeah, onion layer architecture, something like that. Because if you compromise the structure, you compromise the future. Okay, your software must be able to make changes without the high cost. Yeah. What I mean by high cost is maybe you have to work with many people to do several changes to your software. That means that your software is not flexible. So, um, how to make sure that your software is easy to change in the future? After you wrote your code, you make sure it works, you refactor it. Okay, because working on a big company like Buka, it's not always the case you have new feature to work on. Okay, sometimes you have to work on your existing code and make sure that run smoother than before, run faster than before, run with better memory consumptions. Okay, so after you test your code, you check where is there uh, repetitions in your code that you have to work and try to refactor it, and that's how you make sure that you ensure the structure is built well as much as you can. Okay, and the third one, being a software engineer, actually your career is your responsibility. So be your own boss. Okay, your employer not really responsible to your career. You have to make sure that you are marketable. Okay, it's not your employer responsibility to train you. It's not your employer responsibility to send you the conference, to buy you the books, to make sure that you have the ability to work. These things, learning, buying the books, working on the conference, it's your responsibility. Okay. Yeah, several company have perks, have benefits that providing these books, this conference. If you are already or you work in the future in that kind of company, be thankful because not many company can do something like that. Yeah, because you owe as an engineers, we owe our employer a certain time amount of effort. Like in Indonesia, typically like 40 hours a week. These 40 hours should be spent, yeah, those 40 hours should be spent on the employer's problem, not on your problem. So if you think that I cannot write this code, this is my problem right now, I cannot contribute to the project, that's your problem. You work on that. You try to find videos or learn from some books, and doing it in the time of the working in the company, actually it's not that kind of professionals. You should plan on working 60 hours per week, if I may. If you start your career now, you should plan on working 60 hours per week. The first 40 hours are for your employer, and the rest of 20 hours is for you to elevate your capability, to make sure that you sharpen your skills, because software engineering is a skill that you can be master after you experience it. You work software, you build code, you contribute, etc. So be your own boss, know your field, because it's your responsibility to work on your capacity as a software engineer. Okay, and the last one is you have to deliver results, and this is, I think, the most important thing. When I share my presentations, these presentations to my boss in Buka, actually, ensure the function, ensure the structure, your own boss, it's a good thing you have, but this is the most important thing. Professional software engineers deliver results. Yeah. You have can-do attitude. You have a a mindset that you can learn, that you can grow, that you can solve this problem, despite of you maybe you haven't seen it yet in your time in university, but it's your job to solve that. It's your job to learn, to asking questions, to find maybe someone else that already or have experience that working on the problem. Okay. Once I joined the Buka, the project itself, what we call it the Prambanan, yeah, not to mention it because the team is expected to finish the job from 1 year timeline into half of it, 6 months. That's what we call it Prambanan, uh, because it's half a parallel that building a temples in just a short time to make sure the business sites metrics delivered. So uh, I just joined in February in 2020, and we have like 4 months, yeah, from the deadlines. Yeah. The deadline is on the June or July, if I'm not mistaken. And the caveat is if we cannot deliver the projects in time, okay, we should still run this on-prem data center, and it will cost us a lot. So, finishing this project, it's very important to your career, to your position in this company. That's what my boss said when I came in the first day of my job. And and after that, we have this project called about the bukalapak.com. You can find and open the website because we have many projects that run parallelly. Sometimes projects like marketing websites is outsourced to vendors. Okay, and I think our stakeholders is not really happy with what the vendors did. The vendors hand over the code to us, and the stakeholders said that yeah, it will be a maintenance mode. You don't have to work on that in daily basis. So everyone in our squads, in my squads, is really relieved that okay, we just get a code from vendors that not really good in terms of a, standard with what Buka have. It's not the code is not good, but just the standard and the technology stack is different with what we have. And not that long after we receive the information that it will be a maintenance mode, uh, there's announcement that we need to redo, we need to replace the website that just already online. Maybe it's for just 2 or 3 weeks, and with the short deadline. Okay, and I have this kind of mantra when I was in university, and this is why what my lecturer taught me. Right, as an informatics engineering, don't ever say you can't. You always say you can. I can, but yeah, that's the trick. You can't. You can do it, but with some prerequisites, with some certain criteria. Maybe it's persons that you have to work together, or maybe some tools that can accelerate your development. So when my the shareholders, or sorry, the stakeholders of these websites said to us that can you do this project because we need to launch in by November. At the time it's September, and so we just only have like 2 months, and at that time there's no design at all for the new website. So as professionals, you cannot decline the kind of project. What you can do is work around with your energy and with your focus, and what you have all of the resources, right? The tools and your counterpart and your teams. So you just have to manage it. And fortunately, we can deliver the results. we did finishing the projects with some what we call it a tech debt maybe because we need to deliver the results and the tech debt itself is very manageable and from the architecture perspective it's just for the marketing websites, right? So hopefully that's meant to give you an insight how to make sure that you deliver the results. It's very clear. It is complete or not. Yeah, it's just binary. It is completed or not, 0 or 1. Okay, and that's all for the criteria is to be how to be a software engineers. Now we will talk about the tips how to you can train yourself to achieve the criteria and at the end to be a professional software engineers. The first group of activity, what we call it, work with ethics. Yeah, you have a good time management as software engineers. 8 hours is remarkably short period of time. Um, you only have 40 hours a week. It's only 8 hours a day, less than 30,000 seconds. You expect that you use those few precious seconds as efficiently as effectively possible. And you said you don't say Kapuja because yeah, you have to work 8 hours, right? But you know, in software industry, there's always this adagium that software projects are always late because estimation are always wrong. How could be an estimation is wrong? Because we are as the software engineers, I think it's not very disciplined about our time management. Okay, in my previous company that I tried to make up, sorry, try to know better about not the productivity, yeah, but how long does really the engineers are spending their time working on a code or working on projects. You know how much many? It's just only 5 hours a day, not 8 hours. And maybe some of you will say, this is a creativity work that you need time to think, blah blah blah. But if every day you only work for 5 hours, it's sure that your project will be late, right? So you should have a good time management. One of the technique that you can try is what we call it a Pomodoro technique. Uh, you set a standard kitchen timer for 25 minutes. Maybe you can use your smartphone right now. And while the timer is running, you let nothing interfere with what you are doing. You be a monk, you calm, and you work with your code. Okay, nothing can interfere you. And then after 25 minutes, take a break of 5 minutes. Okay, by using this technique, you will slice your days into 14 time slots that you can use for your work, and you can make sure this each slot could be a very useful for you to deliver your work. And what we call it another ethics is a doing tasks. I mentioned it before that how can you know you're responsible? You do the test because testing is actually communicating the requirement between the product owner to the engineering teams, right? The acceptance test will make sure and will clarify what actually the end user needs compared to what actually we built. Yeah. And professional developers test their code. QA should find nothing. But don't fall into the trap that you have to achieve 100% coverage. It is not very practical. And um, in a software development life cycles, if you knew, there is a technique called TDD, or what we call it a test-driven development. It's a powerful tool to make sure that you can practice yourself to make sure that you wrote the test first and then you wrote the code. Okay, you wrote the test first, you make sure the test is failed, and then you make sure your code, you refactor your code until the test is work or pass the test, or what we call it grade. Yeah. Um, in the software development lifecycle, there's this like 5 or 6 steps. In agile, there's a different steps, and if you practice TDD or test-driven development, it's one of the powerful tools adopted by many unicorn in Indonesia. I've been into a big unicorn, right? Both of them using TDD, and they reap their benefit because the test coverage is quite high, around 80 or 80, 70%. It's very achievable, and you should try to achieve that kind of level of disciplines. Yeah. So you have work with your time management, and you should work with testing. Your QA should find nothing. Okay. And the second one, the group of tips that you need to have is how to work with others. As you know, building a software in a big company, you need to collaborate with others. And how we collaborate in a software projects? You know how? Meetings, right? Meetings are very important. There are a lot of meetings, sprint planning, sprint retro, alignment meetings, etc. They are very important, but you have to know that a meeting, it costs about $200 per hour per attendee. Yeah, I don't know how many comes to the sessions. If there are 10% come to the sessions, come to the meetings in a company, there are 10% come into the company. The cost itself is not just $200, yeah, because $200 is per attendee. If there are 10% in a room have a meeting, it costs the company, almost as high as 200 multiplied with 10% means $2,000. You should very carefully finding the meetings. Meetings are necessary, but sometimes also it huge time waste your time. So you have to be very careful about which meeting that you have to attend. And one of the most important thing your manager can do is to shield you from meetings. Yeah, because as an engineering manager, my utmost priority, of course, is delivering the features. But the second one is to make sure that not my engineers come into the meeting every day, every hours, and every invitations. It's my job to filters the invitations and knowing that which meeting is important, or should I just come to the meeting and just be a technical proxy between one squad to my squad. So there's this book called Death by Meetings. It's very funny. The book is very sarcastic. Um, the first 2 months of my tenure in Buka, if we work on one sprint, it consists of 80 hours a week in 2 weeks. Yeah. I think I have a meeting almost as high as 60 hours. So 80 hours in 2 weeks, I have 60 hours just to have the meetings. And the rest of the 20 hours is just separated and distributed into just small chunk of time in a Monday and 30 minutes in Tuesday and here and there. So there's not much time for me to reflect and to calmly sit and really think about what we have to build, what quality we want to achieve, which engineers that have to be motivated on, because the meetings are very many. And after that, I wrote an article after reading these books and shouting, "Hey, bro, let's make meeting less and less, and Thankfully, currently we are practicing what we call it asynchronous meeting, where we can wrote the content itself before actually delivering the meetings. And yeah, it shortened the amount of meetings that I have to attend. Okay. If you work with others, you have to be able to handle the pressures. Why? How do you want the surgeon to behave? Appear calming or sweating? Yeah. If you are on the operating room, how do you want a surgeon to behave? That's why we as engineers should be a professional engineers. We are expected to be calm and decisive under pressures. Okay, we should calm and decisive under pressures, and the very best things to be able to handle the pressure is to actually avoiding the pressures. Okay, to handle the pressures in the work environment is to avoid the pressures, not to avoid the problems, not to avoid the work itself, but to provide to make sure you have serenity to can deliver your attitudes. Okay, um, you have commitments. Please be careful about the commitments. Uh, you make sure, and then you just stay clean. Yeah, when the pressure came, you just stay clean. Don't leave technical debt. You know technical debt, right? When you wrote a code and then the code expected will be resulted in many bugs in the future. You have to be disciplined in the time of crisis, even in a crisis like when you deploy a code and you deploy your software. There's always a time that downtime or the hardware break, your software is not available, and then you've got a call in at the night. I haven't got a call at 2 at night, right, from our DevOps software that automatically call the managers if the software is failed. And when the crisis itself, you should be calm, although you got pressures and you don't know how to solve the problems, right? As an engineering managers, and you also maybe you are become the software engineers, you should be calm first, take a breath, and finding it one step ahead, one time, one thing at a time, line by line, your code, which resulted to uh, the problem itself. And most software is created by teams, so you have to collaborate, right? You can't work by yourself. Okay. And the guy who wrote the book about the death by meetings also wrote a book about the five dysfunction of the teams. Yeah, although it's not your job to make sure the environment where you work is very trustable, respond to conflict, not fear of it, and etc. You also have responsibility as a professional software engineers to contribute to the environment itself. And the last one, to learn. Yeah, being a professional, you are being a lifelong learner. Your learning time doesn't stop after you are graduating from your university. You are expected to learn on the job, to learn on the project, to learn and learn again about your code, to make sure you always learn and make you better and better. Because when performance matters, yeah, I mean when you judge by your work, uh, professional practice. Okay, a musician rehearse their partitures, doctor practice their features, yeah, lawyers practice their arguments, soldiers rehearse their missions. When performance matters, software engineers should practice. Okay, you don't apply a jobs, work for 8 hours, and then you went home just sleep. It doesn't reflect professionalism as a software engineers. Okay, there's a what we call it coding dojo terms that coined by several senior software engineers. They think they should work. The developers, the more junior developers, should work always work on their capability, right? In karate in Japan, uh, if a team member, you have to always repeat the same series of movements, what we call it kata. And there's a website called Code Kata where you can go in there and always learn and practice your code. And in the general terms is what we call it coding dojo, right? You should find your coding dojo. It could be online courses. It could be a book. It could be a hackathon, internal projects, and sometimes it could be open source. Yeah, you could broaden your experience to do the open source projects because when you are contributing to open source projects, you can practice ethics. You wrote software well, you wrote the documentation, you respond to the tickets, um, you asking questions with the universal language, which is in English. It's not our mother tongue language, but you should have to learn about it. You should write in English. Try not to attack someone because it's internet, everyone, and every time someone got attacked. But don't be someone like that. Try to broaden your experience by practice in open source projects. This is homegrown project from the previous company used to make sure your application, uh, the log of the application can be analyzed by the other teams. And one more thing, after you knew the criteria of professional software engineers, yeah, as to ensure the functions, to ensure the structures, be your own boss because your career is your responsibility and you deliver the results. And we've talked many times about the tips about the Pomodoro technique, coding dojo. After that, and only after that, there is a problem with our community right now regarding how they see our software engineers. Yeah. Um, a medical professions has developed a discipline of intense mentoring. Yeah. Whether it's true that there are relatively few deaths caused by software bugs compared to a doctor, but there are significant monetary losses if you wrote a wrong software, you wrote wrong code that resulted from financial loss or financial monetary kind of things, incidents. Okay. And somehow the software industry has gotten the idea that programmers are programmers and that once you graduated, you can code. You cannot. Maybe you can code here and there. Maybe you can build some apps. But after you graduate, there's a gap between what expected at your company to your actual expertise. I can say this because I have seen a lot about too many companies talk to me, talk to us, and we are discussing about there is this kind of a whole a knowledge gap between the graduate software engineers to what we expected in the company, and thankfully with yeah, a Bangkit program is one of the they call it one of the best things provided by the uh, network of the unicorn to make sure that once you graduate from university, you have uh, enough knowledge to be able to work on the company. That's what I mentioned to you before. It's your responsibility to learn, right? Why the company currently building their own internal academy, their own bootcamp? Because that's the fact that many graduates cannot directly work on the project in the day one or day two or day 30. And if we asking deeply in the conversations, they just don't explore enough in their free time when they're at university. Uh, Taking a 20 credit semesters just means 20 hours a week, but that's not the case, right? 20 hours credit semesters means 20 hours in class, 20 hours in homework, and 20 hours you learn by yourself. Okay, so maybe you think you can graduate after you graduate, you can code. Maybe you can, maybe you cannot. I don't know. You have to find yourself and make sure your ability to what the expectation of the company it's match, because in a medical professions, after you have the degree, yeah, what we call it MD, medical SCAT ya in Indonesia, ya, sarjana kedokteran, you should adding at least 1.5 years to get the doctor title, and then uh, you can test yourself with what we call it competency test, and then after get that achievement from a body called KKI, Konsil Kedokteran Indonesia, that have authority to to judge that, hey, this doctor could work, this doctor cannot, then uh, that's how you can be practice, open in your practice or work for a hospital. But that's not the case in the software development industry. You know, after you graduated, you expect it to be worked on directly into your code and into your projects. But that's okay. What I want to mention here, this is your first step. Bangkit is the first step for you to learn the curriculum that really relevant to what industry expected. I just want to make sure that if you are uh, joining a company, find your mentors, find your managers, make sure that you can learn as much as possible in the first 5 years of your career, because there's I think it's a research, yeah, call from Malcolm that told us you can be master of something after learning or practicing for almost 10,000 hours, ya. 10.000 jam, ya. I think it's 4 or 5 years. Okay, because school can teach the theory of computer programming, right? School doesn't and cannot teach the discipline, the practice, and the skills being a craftsman. Those things are acquired through years of experience and mentoring, and that's what we call it. Time is very important because we can't buy the time. The engineers who already have experience for 5 years means they already have the experience, they already have the knowledge. It's way more uh, um, respected by the employer. That's why I think we have to appreciate the environment, how the ministry operate right now, because in this current pressing issue regarding irrelevancy of the uh, ability of the software engineers. There is a MBKM project, Campus Merdeka. One of it is a Bangkit that you can choose and practice your skills, right? And you can learn, like, there are three different tracks: mobile, a back end, and AI. So you should very thankful that you live in this era, because when I graduated in 2010, the ecosystem is not there yet, you know. And I hope after you acquire those skills, and maybe 4 or 5 years later, you get back and sharing your experience for the next future generation of software developers. Because by sharing, by teachings, you actually learn also, right? You learn a lot by teachings or mentoring someone. Okay, that's not too much to ask, I think. After you got the disciplines, this is my boy, my child, when he's graduated, the teachers told us, yeah, moms, um, let make sure your boy or your daughter use the cloth or that represented, um, that with his hobby or his aspiration, what he want to be when he has grown. Okay, and maybe because he's watching me every day, even in pandemic, working behind computers. When I'm asking, when I asked him, he mentioned that I want to be like you. I want to be a programmer because you can work from home. You can play with me if I ask. Even though it's not long time, but it's very flexible. So I want to be a programmer. He said that the responsibility to make sure that 10 years later after your career, it's fall to you. Okay, maybe right now it's fall to me to fall to Mas Yoza and the other mentors and the other guest speakers. But 5 6 years later from now, it's fall to you. Okay, please, 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 please. In Indonesia, what we call it medit, yeah, pelit. Don't be a pelit guy. Um, if you can be a mentor, just do it. If you can give some apprenticeship to younger generations, just do it. Um, yeah, that's one of my passion right now. Teaching and sharing and mentoring others, and to make sure they don't fall to the trap that maybe I walked through in the last 10 years, right? So be professionals. Ensure your code's work. Ensure the structure is flexible. Be your own boss and learn every time. Be a lifelong learner. You have the first step here. Apply to Bangkit and learn in this gloomy Friday in Bandung right now. Maybe in your hometown, I don't know. But you have start your first step, right? If you want to go further, like 1,000 steps, or you want to fly to the moon, you have to take the first step, right? This is your first step. Bangkit is your first step. Please, 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 please be enthusiastic about it. Be responsible and learn as much as you can from the mentors and the guest speakers. Thank you. We are always hiring. Please find a careers at bukalapak.com. Sometimes there are also internship positions. We just opened our new office in Australia. Currently, we have 4 offices in Jakarta, Bandung, Singapore, and Australia. So open careers.bukalapak.com. Thank you very much. Please be professional software engineers. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mas Puja. I think it's a very interesting session. I got few notes, but actually we got more than 50 questions here in the comment.
Wow,
So let's
that
start
many.
with yeah. If you want to take a break, it's okay. But again, guys, please behave. For those of you who are in the comment, please. Put your questions in the chat box and our team will choose. I think we still have uh, more than 50 minutes to discuss few things, but I'll start with very light questions.
Okay.
um very light question. This is actually an interesting questions from Farhan. May I ask to the speaker, are senior software engineers should remember every code or sometimes still copy pasting code from Stack Overflow?
Yeah, that's interesting questions. Yeah. Nobody can remember anything right now. No, nobody can
Hmm.
remember everything, right? If you ask me, are senior software engineers should remember every code? Of course, no. Yeah, that's the truth. Of course, no, because okay, let's take a step back. What you learn as a software engineers? What did you learn as a software engineers? Informatics, computer science. You just learn about four things. Four things. The first one is decomposition.
Hmm.
When you find a problem, maybe it's big, maybe it's small, you decompose. You try to understand the problem and decompose it first. You separate the problem into small of chunk that you can actually work on. That's the first thing you learn. And the second thing, you learn about abstractions, or what we call it prioritizations, because after you chunk the problem into several small tiny bits, you have to choose which problem you work first. That's the second thing that you learn as a software engineers. And the third one, you learn about algorithm, right? And then data structure, and then the programming paradigm. What we call it learning about the algorithm, it's actually learning about solving a problem structurally and with step by step, right? When in algorithm, you learn writing code line by line. You don't wrote a paragraph of code. It doesn't work like that. You work line by line. You work step by step. You want to sort this kind of list. You wrote your code line by line. You think carefully and you think structurally in your head. And after you finding many problems during your career and your software engineers, then you learn about the fourth thing that called pattern recognitions, because you already have many solutions, you have worked on many problems, and you think, oh, if this is the problem, I can use my last code several years ago. Maybe you forget your last code, then you can think, I found this problem like 2 or 2 weeks ago. I know how to work with this. I can find the solution in Stack Overflow. That's okay, because you knew the problem. You did understand about the problem itself. So the answer to the questions is a software engineer senior one. You don't have to remember all of the solutions, okay? But you have to very great about the composition, um, abstractions, algorithms, and pattern recognitions. That's I think the answers for the questions.
Yeah.
Mas Yusa?
Yeah. I think it's answering the question. I think like yeah, somehow your sound is breaking.
Hello. Yeah.
Can you? Yeah, I think we can hear you clearly now. All right. So yeah, that is the core of problem solving and software engineering, right? It's basically
Yes.
then making things into like smaller chunks, prioritize it, choose which tools or choose which technique is suitable for, because probably the solution is just spreadsheet actually rather than complex codes, something like that, right? So we,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have we have
Yeah.
this kind of of situations. Okay, so a follow-up questions maybe. This is a questions that is related from Vincent. Um, how important is for a software engineer to understand their environment before making codes or scripts? Before
Sorry.
they
What,
are
what
making.
what is the question again?
How
Oh, okay.
important is a software engineer to understand their environment before
How
coding, before start?
important?
Yeah, to understand their environment.
I would like to follow up about this question. What the definition of the environment here? If if the environment refer to or which operating systems, I think it's very important software engineers to understand their environment, before making the script, because script or code, it's just the translation of the solution from your from your thinking. So it's just the translation, right? By means the translation, it should match with the environment where the solution will run. Okay, so
Yeah.
I think the question is yes, you have to understand the environment before making the script. If the environment in this question reverts to the cloud or the operating system where the solution will run. So that's
Okay.
I think the answer.
All right. So the next one. This is from Muhammad Wahid. Is there an experience where we have to lead a more senior programmer? How can we lead such team when we ourselves is a newbie?
That's interesting. I don't think so. Unless you are moved to other role, yeah, because
Hmm.
there is there are several roles outside software engineers like project managers, technical program managers, product managers. Sometimes as the business itself, we work with the business stakeholders that's younger than us.
Hmm.
um, so for these questions, I think if you are engineers, newbie one, the rookie one, you won't be assigned to a team where you lead the team. Okay,
Hmm.
you won't be assigned because you just starting your career. You don't have a lot of context regarding the problem in your company.
Yeah.
You, as a software engineers, your main task, your main activity is got instruction for your managers or your from your engineering buddies, yeah, the mid-year or
Leads.
the
Yeah.
senior one, and work with the problem. Huh? So I don't think so. You won't find a condition where you work and you lead you lead the team where this the more senior and you are the leaders. I think that's the from my experience at least much is.
Yeah. But I think in case of probably like Mas Puja already a senior engineering manager. I mean like what there should be a time that you need to lead someone that is more senior. I mean like uh, we are not talking about newbie, right? Just a follow-up question. When you are a senior, but you know that there is someone that doesn't want to be a manager, right? There are individual
Oh,
contributors that are more senior than you. So how about that case, in your opinion?
yeah. That's actually happened to me in Buka. The most senior engineers in Buka, it's actually the first employee, and this guy is on my team. We have, I think, he's older than me, like 7 or 8 years.
Mm,
Um, as an engineering managers, your view of the problem is quite different from software engineers because you actually manage the people, not the not coding by yourself again, yeah, as an engineering
mm,
managers. So if you move to your managerial positions and then you are working with your individual contributor that older than you don't mess with their skills, you don't mess with their knowledge because
yeah.
hello bro, they have deep expertise regarding them. Okay, so you manage them by helping them solving the question from the stakeholders, helping them clarifying what they actually did, helping them sorting the priorities because engineering managers have authority to splitting the task, to distributing the task, which people got the task and what time, which quality. That's the role as an engineering managers actually. But if you are more rookie or more younger software engineers, I think you won't be giving uh, a chance to lead a senior one, except in a discussion. Yeah, it's different story,
Oh yeah.
right? In a discussion
Yeah.
like sprint planning or IPM meetings, everyone will got invitation to talk and share their ideas to work on solutions. So at that time, as a rookie, as a new engineers, try as best to understand the solution, refrain yourself to directly answering the questions, and try to think and learn much about it. And when you are feeling confident, just show that you have this kind of arguments. And as a rookie, don't be afraid to asking questions, even it's
Mm,
you think it's a dumb question. There is no such thing like we call it dumb questions. It's a questions,
Yeah.
bro. You just ask.
Yeah.
Okay? Malu bertanya sesat di jalan, it's real. It's real.
Yeah.
You can wrote.
The worst thing is not answered, right? Maksudnya paling jelek ya udah nggak
Yeah,
dijawab gitu. Ya udah nggak rugi
yeah,
gitu.
yeah. It's the worst thing, but it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world, you know. If you're asking and you don't get the answers.
Okay. Uh, uh, Mas Puja also mentioned about how documentation helps. How if we contribute to open source project, we will be customized to well written documentation and etc. So, in a practical sense, on a software project, how is documentation used?
Yeah. Sometimes the developers that work on the project is not, or it's not there again. Maybe he left sometimes ago, 2 or 3 years, and the software is quite stable. It come into the maintenance mode, and then you join the company, you work on the teams, and ya apes aja gitu ya, some S happen, ya SH, bintang-bintang happen, incident happen, you have to solve, the problem, and imagine if there is no documentation, how you can start combing the code. It's not your code. You don't know how to think, how the developers think when you wrote the code. Okay, so the documentation is very important. The documentation is very important. Working in Buka, 600 plus of software engineers, the first thing we did before building the software is agreeing about how the data communications, and we should document it, the formats first before we do the code. Yeah, there's a software called a blueprint in Buka.
Mm.
Before we actually building an API, we wrote the spec first, and the spec itself is the documentation how the program will work. Okay, so we have this kind of tools that everyone can join and find any endpoints, any APIs that already available in the Buka environment, and those is very helpful because we ingrain the activity itself in the practical and in the floor. Yeah, every engineer should wrote the blueprint first before actual coding. And
Mm.
since like I think it's 2019, yeah, before building a new microservices, you should write a documentation first, and then you have to present it in the forums, and you have to defend why you should build a new microservices. Why not be embedded the features in this microservices or in this microservices? So you actually like doing your thesis project in your university when you are working on karya ilmiah, and you have to defend the reason behind it. So it's very important. If you work in the large scale organizations like Buka or other unicorn, I think the practice it's gotten mature right now, and yeah, you can try by yourself. And working with open source project will train you to write the documentation, yeah, in English basically.
In English, basically. Yep. That's also why Bangkit is done in English. Okay. So there is also an interesting questions about uh, refactoring, right?
Yeah.
Mas Puja mentioned about your team needs to refactor a Prambanan, a Candi kind of thing, right? 6 months versus 1 year. So optimizing your existing code or optimizing existing code access in the repository. Is this a responsibility a person or team, or probably like should we optimize without any triggers, right? Because as Mas Puja mentioned, it was triggered by something, right? To optimize things. But is it a responsibility for a person, a team, or you just not work on refactoring code when you are not asked?
Okay. Um, the responsibility for I think it's for the team right now, because it's the main job or your engineering managers to splitting or distributing the teams. They should he or she should know which are the priorities, and um, code refactoring. Yeah, if you are in the bigger software company or tech unicorns, sometimes it's ingrained on the OKR for your teams. Yeah,
Hmm.
that you have to improve your code coverage. You have to improve your response time. You have to improve your memory footprints. Those of kind of things is engineering tasks, and these engineering tasks uh, just can be happen if we refactor the code. Yeah, because it's not new feature. Yeah, it's not new features. Memory consumptions, speeds, documentations. It's not new features. It's we got there by refactoring our code. It's the main job of your engineering managers to splitting the responsibility who is doing what in this particular sprints. So it's the team responsibility. But if I may, if you want to learn a lot, you can learn a lot by Refactor. We've mentioned about 40 hours a week for your normal hours. But if you just start your career, 60 hours is quite significant, because the other 20 hours you can use the time to learn the code data, the coding dojo, the refactoring things. You can refactoring by yourself without waiting for instruction for your managers, because by this is the key ya Mas Yoza dan everyone. To be able to write the code, you have to read a lot. Reading the code is the prerequisite to be able to write code.
Hmm.
So you have to reading your own code. You read others' code, and you try to refactor the code into the as much as possible better code. And to refactor, you have to read. So read first and then write. And that's the problem of Indonesian people, because we don't love to read.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Literacy
say,
literacy problem. Yeah.
literacy problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So again, Mas Puja also mentioned that being a software engineer, you need to basically for every profession, you need to be a lifelong learner, right? But can you share a tips on um, how you keep updated, keep it uh, uh, on a learning mode
Yeah.
as a software engineer?
So this is the most important questions I think we've got this afternoon here, because it's the practical questions.
Yeah.
After you reach a certain stages in your life, you have to choose, because bro, you can't have it all. Yeah,
Mm,
it's a rare breed that you can be an individual contributor, but you can also be a people managers,
mm,
because it's different things. Moving up from senior software engineers to managerial track, it's not a promotion. It's a
yep.
lateral move. It's a lateral move,
Yeah.
because you have to think differently. Before, your judgment, your success is judged by how well you wrote the code.
Yep.
So if you choose from your senior software engineers and then you want to be an IC, there is no other thing that could help you uh, other than practicing every day or maybe weekly about your sharpen skills. Okay, you have to sharpen your skills. If you are a chef, you have to cook.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you are opening the restaurant, you
Yeah.
learn different skill
Things.
sets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the different things. As an engineering manager, I have to work on people. I have to manage people. I have to learn about people. Bro, people is very
Mm,
unique. Yeah,
Yeah.
every one of it has their own problem, has their own style, has their own way of communication. The way you can work with people is you listen,
Yeah.
and by listening you learn, and by learning then you can try solving the problem. So if the question is how you keep up with the industry trend, for now as an engineering manager, I read a lot about which technology can be used. Yeah, not as I work on the code itself. After I reading, and maybe we have to find some deep dive of an article that consists of certain numbers of comparisons. Maybe you have new projects, and you should choose between this language and this language. You read and you try to comprehend what kind of the informations, and then you come to your engineers. Yeah, maybe the junior one, bro. Try this one. Let's see the results, because yeah, maybe we need this kind of things in our next projects. And that's what I did as an engineering manager. I read a lot. I read about blockchain, metaverse, all of the overused words right now, all of the buzzwords. Yeah, and sometimes I read about tempe mahal sekarang, something like that. You have to have your broaden knowledge, because as managers, sometimes the problem itself comes from people, and it's not about technical. Yeah,
Mm.
sometimes he said that, bro, gue pusing, why, ya harga kedelai mahal, what's wrong with that, ya kan. Yeah, my father is farmer in my hometown. He told me
Yeah.
that he
Yeah.
cannot sell, and that burdened his thinking, his mind, and then he
Yeah.
cannot work, and that become the engineering manager's problem. So knowing about the kedelai price, maybe it's your job also as an engineering manager, but it's different if you are individual contributor. You have to sharpen your skills. If you uh, what we call it, watching the um, Marvel TVs, yeah, Marvel films, where the Captain America are splitting the locks in the second films of the Avengers. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why we should sharpen our skills, sharpen our access, trying again coding dojo, code kata, writing, open sourcing, reading, writing a lot, participating in conferences like this. It's the only way to keep up, or maybe you just live up. Yeah, many engineers uh, hating. Yeah, many engineers become hate with some technology
Mm.
because they don't conquer the technology and they got left behind. Everyone
Yeah.
learn about the technology and can reap the benefit of it, and he are very, maybe they think the technology is not important or whatnot, and they stop learning. And then when some technology is successful, he feel be cheated. "Eh, the technology is very bad, the principle is very bad," but it's because he don't have open mind. At least try to learn the basic of it. Or maybe you can ask your
Mm.
friend. Yeah,
Yeah.
practically I haven't mastered many programming language until now. I
Mm.
just learned several. Yeah, because yeah, for me, language is just a language. Yeah, what we have to learn is the basic of computational thinking and the basic of computer science itself. It's the most important things you have to learn. Language you can learn by yourself. You should learn by yourself.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, after that thoughtful question, maybe we will answer a philosophical questions. Um,
Oh,
is being a software engineer change the way how you face and solve life problem?
that's a bullseye questions. Yeah. Um, I think yeah, because my wife said that I'm too logical person, and
Mm.
sometimes he said that you don't have empathy. Sometimes you just find it black or white, right or wrong, or one or zero, because it is in computer. There's no such thing like a continuous value, right? It's discrete problem.
Mm.
Engineers is trained to look at a problem and try to the solutions, and the solution it's solve the problem or not. Being software engineers did change the way how I solve my life problems, and sometimes it's not always bring a good results. Yeah, if you have this kind of driven person, be mindful because you cannot solve all of your problems by yourself. I learned it the hard way. You can ask for help. If you don't know, you can ask for help. You are not the most clever person in this world. Okay, that's I learned it the hard way. And now, if I solve the life problems and I face the difficulties, I try to find someone else that already been in that kind of situation and asking for help. 3 years ago, I'm not that kind. I always think for myself and try to think and feel that I can solve all of the problems that I face in my life. Nggak sehat, bro. It's not a healthy way to live your life.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it did change the way we look at the problems because as an engineers, you have to work really hard solving your problems. But there is another factor that contribute to the success of your solutions or the success of your life. Yeah. Some call it faith, some call it agama, some call it a thing that bigger than ourselves, but
Yeah.
there's something else outside ourselves, the bigger energy than ourselves. Yeah, so that's I learned it the hard way, so you don't have to learn it the hard ways too, bro. Yeah, don't feel
Okay.
logic, but use your feeling also.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, all right. So, the other questions that we have here. Mas Puja said that most software engineering projects are late, right? So, um, as an engineering manager, when there is a delay on someone else's job that making everyone's job got delayed, what should you do as a project leader to deal with that problem?
This is the classic problem, and the answer is very simple. You inform.
Mm,
It's the same thing happen if you are fighting with your girlfriend, right, or with
mm,
your wife, right? You communicate with her. You communicate the problem because the stakeholders have expectation. Yes,
yep,
okay, but they also human. If you talk to them, you are being reasonable. They can hear you. Okay, what I did as a project leader back then, if there is a delay, first thing first, don't directly blame the person. Okay,
yep,
let's sit together, asking questions, clarifying things, why it happened, and etc. Trying to understand and formulating how you deal with these situations. And after that, the first thing you did is communicating that there might be a delay to your employer or to your client. Maybe you got scolded, maybe you got your boss be angry. That's life, bro. That's life. That's the work.
yeah,
That's why we choose this profession because you want to
yeah,
suffer. No, 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 something like that. But that's the life. It's happen every day, every night. That maybe there's a delay, but you should communicate. Don't
mm,
be a ninja. You know ninja? Vanish. Okay? When there's a delay, you be vanished. You don't respond in your text. You don't respond in Slack. You just be vanished using a genjutsu, and you just vanish into the thin air. Don't be like a ninja, ya. Like Naruto lah, being a Hokage, ya. Jadilah kepala desa gitu. Ya, bertanggung jawab ya, bukan jadi ninja yang hilang.
mm,
Jadi ya, I think you have to communicate well. Learn it the hard way ya. Communicate well, writings, write documents, reading book, and then you try to communicate.
mm.
That's the
All
only
right.
way to deal with the delay.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we still have some questions, but uh, just to reiterate on the points that uh, actually in some cases over communicating is better than not communicating at all, right? I mean, like, yeah, we know that over communicating is disturbing some people, some of your teams, but it's better to let everyone know rather than everyone asking why, how, and everything. So yeah, I think just to make sure, if you have problems, communicate. Okay, so the questions. What is your biggest motivation, Mas Puja? Keeping you pushing forward to become a professional software engineer. What interests you so much?
Wow, oh, that's deep. Because we have limit in our life, right? So
Mm.
the most important question is what kind of word that you want to leave behind for others, especially for your family, especially for your child. Okay, that's the question that I've got since like 3 years ago. Um, if I die tomorrow, do I satisfied with what we have, with what we did in the software industry? No, bro. Bankit is one of the great programs. You, all of you is the yeah. I think it's quite lucky because you can participate in this kind of problems, in this kind of programs. Um, More than 300,000 IT graduates, not only from university, from vocational schools. If you know that many
Yeah,
vocational schools have programs called software engineering class,
RPL.
300 RPL ya, rekayasa
Yeah.
perkebunan. 300,000, 300,000, they don't have a jobs right now. You know, when we did this class, we are trying to enrich our capability, uh, but many of us, many others, don't have this kind of luck like
Luxury.
we have right now. So that's keep me motivated every day, not just to be a professional software engineers, but to be responsible. Some of us will think it's not our responsibility, right? Teaching them. Maybe you don't feel the responsibility. I feel I have. And I think it's our responsibility because you have the knowledge. Yeah, you are the privileged one. You have the knowledge. You are in the in this industry, and you can work with several big companies. And there's many of them can't work because maybe lack of knowledge, lack of motivations. But
Mm,
every times because they have a gap, knowledge gap, and it's
mm,
way more bigger than what we have in bridging the university graduate to company. Yeah, these
mm,
vocational graduates have way more bigger problem than what we have in university. So it's very big problems to answer the questions. It's what keep me motivated. Uh, I learn so I can teach.
mm. Okay. Relating to this question, we in Bangkit, I think we have almost 20% of our cohort, which is non IT student. So
I see.
so they come from non IT backgrounds. So any tips for them how to compete with those other IT related students?
uh, this is the thing that I've learned just several months ago. What it's called IT, informatics, information and math, information and math. You did knew the math, right? You did knew the informations, right? Information is just story that come to your mind, and then you have to process it. Um, informatics is just the way of thinking. Yes, informatics graduate have privilege because they have 4 years ahead of you compared to maybe a, a pharmacy students or economical students.
Mm.
But I found in our industry there is a great developers that came from pharmacy background.
Mm.
I found one. There is someone is a economic background, they can code. And I happily knew a doctor, actual doctor, came from University of Indonesia, graduating from it, have a license to practice, apply to uh, master degree in informatics, and he did code. He learned Kotlin, he code, and he built application for health technology.
Mm.
Like we mentioned before, your career is your responsibility. If you want, you can
Yeah.
ask the question first. Do you want it? If you want, then you can. Then you learn. You wake up every morning. You do the drills. You learn. You practice. You be better every day. There's a book, Yosa, you must be known about this book, Atomic Habits, right?
Yeah.
1% every day, it will be compounding into 30 something percent better.
Yeah.
So you just have to be better 1% than yesterday.
Yeah.
Beat the yesterday of you. Try to beat the yesterday of you. Just trying to be better just 1% from your yesterday. That's the only way you can compete in this industry.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's more into like hard work. Yeah, I mean like strive, and actually those from non-IT background do actually have an advantage compared to our IT background because we only know IT, right? They know Japanese, probably they know law, they know economic, and they can combine it with IT. So as Mas Puja said, someone who has a background of a doctor and studied about Kotlin, they can create an app about health, right? So those who have economic degree with probably like web programming, they can create a financial software. This, so I think the advantage may apa ya, may offset uh, uh, the apa
Limitations.
ketertinggalan gitu. Iya, iya.
Yes.
So I think us as an IT graduate, we also need to learn about other subjects to be a domain expert, right? Nggak mungkin seorang programmer itu ngerjain project, ngerjain code tanpa ngerti bisnis
Domain.
logiknya gitu kan.
Yeah,
Nggak
you're
mungkin
very true.
gitu kan. Ya, jadi so I think uh, this is an advantage. So if you work probably like 1% harder than the others, yeah, that may come true, I think. All right, so I think we still have probably 15 minutes and a few more questions to answer. Um, as a manager, Mas Puja, how to deal with a job that requires us to get the approval of all stakeholders who have different egos, different choices, different
Okay.
kepentingan.
Yeah. The curse of being a middle management, and the curse of being employee, that you actually work for someone else, that
Yeah.
you sometimes have to get approval to completing some things. If your question is how to deal with jobs, what we call it in Java, in Japanese, sabar.
Patient, be patient.
Patient, be patient, tabah. Because at the end of the day, you got paid because you work, right? And you have to do the work. Other than if you think you have another choice, you think you want to go into that road, yeah, please do. but it's not very easy also building a company
Yep.
from the beginning. User must not know with his experience building the coding. Um, so how to deal with the job? First thing first, being a good listener,
Mm.
because when stakeholders want something, it's for the business also, not uh, for themselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
if the business thrive, you also got the not the profit, what we call it, the advantage, the
Yeah.
keuntungan
Bonus and
juga ya,
everything. Yeah.
bonus
Yeah.
ya, etc. and everything. If yeah, you will work with a bigger company, etc. So um, I think it's the problem, yeah, because if you say that stakeholders have different egos and sometimes you judge them that your boss have their own ego, that's your ego saying that.
Yeah.
That's your ego saying that. Because if you think that every other person have their bigger egos, that's your ego saying something like that. So be mindful, try to practice. That's why many software engineers practice yoga or mindfulness.
Yeah.
Maybe a good one do salat, ya kan? It's because you should practice the calmness. You should
Mm.
concentrate with which what important. You take a break. You did salat for 5 minutes. You rest for that 5 minutes. You yoga, you take 1 hour, you try to be concentrated, to be present in this world and not to be consumed with your problems and your
Mm.
never ending life cycle of your thinking. It's the practice. You have to practice about it. You have to practice about your own ego, because you think that the others have egos. That's your ego saying that. um, Learn to listen, learn to step back, and learn. You should read a book about slow and fast thinking.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
forgot
Fast and
about
slow.
the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fast
Fast
and
and slow.
slow. Yeah,
Thinking,
how to think
thinking
fast
fast
and
and
slow.
slow. Yeah.
Thinking fast and slow. Yeah, again, read a book. By reading a book, you can learn about how the structure content from the author, and sometimes it's very important to know the structures. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the key is mindfulness. I mean, like, no one wants a bad business for your company, right? Jadi nggak ada yang pengen sesuatu yang jelek untuk perusahaan atau untuk organization Anda gitu. Kadang-kadang kita nggak nyampe aja gitu ketika orang memutuskan sesuatu, kita belum tahu pertimbangannya apa gitu. Maksudnya ya itu tadi, kalau kita merasa ego kita paling kok ada orang lain yang egonya lebih besar, kayaknya ego kita gitu. Maksudnya kita harus
Yeah.
kalau emang nggak tahu dan ragu, jangan berasumsi tapi nanya gitu kan. So ask people why do you have to I'm also a fan of Start with Why, Simon Sinek. Ask
Mm.
ask people why. Jadi jangan kayak oh ya udah dikasih kerjaan and then ya udah dilakuin aja gitu tanpa tahu kenapa harus mengerjakan pekerjaan itu. Tapi di satu sisi juga kalau memang kita kenapa sih gitu, jadi tanya aja gitu sampai kita menemukan jawabannya. Oh, that's why
Yeah.
gitu kan. Sehingga kita sampai di titik bahwa nggak ada ego yang lebih besar gitu kan. There is no larger ego than yours actually.
That's why we have
Okay.
2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah, true. Okay, so thinking of the future, what is your opinion about most of software engineer today and how well will they fare in the future?
What do you mean fair? Sejahtera? Something like that?
Mungkin akan ini ya, maksudnya how well mereka akan berada di industri gitu aja lah in the future.
Mm, you should see the trend, because there is this movement called low code and no code platform. Yeah.
Hmm.
So um, several easy apps, I think, will be built by that platform. because they abstracted the most important modules to be worked on. So you have to stay relevant by take one step ahead, after low code, because low code is very suitable for small projects and for a repetitive one, right?
Yeah.
Try to find something that you cannot be replaced of. Yeah, it's what we call HOTS, high order thinking skills.
Mm.
Computer not yet could be synthesized, could be analyzed.
Mm.
Computer cannot yet do decision making like people did. Artificial intelligence with its classifications and clustering algorithm is just 5% of the
Mm.
actual how brain works.
Mm.
So take it easy. You won't be replaced by robot yet, but you should learn one step up than the current trend. That maybe um, don't join a movement or learn software that it's easily replaced by low code or no code development, right? Yeah.
Mm.
So try to find another. Yeah, like Bucket has um, machine learning, right?
Yeah.
Track and also have like Kotlin, yeah, because mobile apps is quite difficult to produce by low code in no code, yeah. Most of them are web based technology
Yeah.
to produce yeah something like native apps, but it's not actually. So just learn the other that cannot solve by low code and no code platform. I think for the next 3 or 5 years.
All right. I think that's all from our questions. So basically, we have some. I think the discussion session is rather more interesting than the slides. Somehow, the questions from the audience are really really insightful. So, any closing statement from you, Mas Puja, to tips or anything you can share with our Bangkit cohort?
Yeah, yeah. Enjoy your time. You cannot come back. Time is your more precious currency. By I mean by enjoying is you did thing that you actually not passionate but you care about. Yeah,
Mm.
passion is too overrated. Is too overused. I think you cannot know your passion without trying several things first.
Yep. Good.
Okay, I just happen to knew that I love teaching after like 6 or 7 years in this industry. After Mas Yoza sent me to several cities in across Indonesia, and we did sharing sessions with many developers. And after years by years, it's compounding, and then um, I've got this understanding that hey, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Mm.
Teaching. That's why in Buka I participate in a program called Buka Academy, and in my free time I co-founded a few foundations to teaching people about how to program. So if you don't know your passion, that's okay. That's okay. Try as much as thing as possible, as long it excites you, as long it sparks you, it
Mm.
make you want to learn, it make you want to wake up in the morning and learn again what you did last night. It doesn't
Mm.
matter about healthcare, about environment, sports. Yeah, because
Mm.
technology, it's my point of view, just enabler.
Yeah.
Yeah, technology can support any kind of industry.
Yeah.
So maybe you can use your technology knowledge to help your brothers, to help your hobbies. Yeah, yeah. I think just do what you love, and
Mm.
habisin jatah gagal waktu muda. Ya.
Mm.
Habisin
Mm.
jatah gagal waktu muda. Nah, itu yang paling mahal sebenarnya, jatah gagal.
Yeah. Thank you. tadi yang disampaikan oleh Mas Puja ini juga belakangan ini jadi buzzword gitu ya. Salah satu yang sering membicarakan tentang misalnya work life balance itu Panji gitu. Dia bilang kayak carilah pekerjaan atau aktivitas yang capeknya membuat kamu bahagia gitu.
Yeah.
Yeah, kan? I mean like that's how we should that's how we can thrive in the industry, not losing motivations and etc. Thank you, Mas Puja, for the session. I think it's almost 2 hours. So again, thank you for all the cohorts that are tuning in. We have more than 1,000 Bangkit
Cool.
students that are watching. So for remarks, Bangkit will have a guest speaker session every Friday. So in many topics. So if you want to watch just for Bangkit student, kindly tune in into your calendar and find the guest speaker sessions in your calendar. The next time around, next week, we will have a topic about startups. So this is also an interesting thing. And again, thank you, Mas Puja. Let's close this. Bye.
Bye everyone. Good luck for you.